Welcome to Rooftop Perspectives. My name is John Whaley, and this is Michael Brewer. Michael, it is good to see you today.
Thank you, John. It is good to see you. Looking forward to a great day.
It's going to be a great day, and we're excited about today's episode. For those of you that are watching for the first time, Rooftop Perspectives is a ministry of the Rooftop International, and it is a weekly broadcast that's entire purpose is to inspire you to join Jesus in his mission in your everyday life. And that mission is making disciples who make disciples. And the way we do that is by sharing with you stories from people who are joining Jesus every day in his mission, where they live, work, and play. And today we have a very special guest with us. So Michael, tell us about today's program.
Well, today we're going to continue looking at men whom God is using to impact the lives of college students. So we're going to be introducing Adam Neal. Adam and his wife Kaitlin lead a ministry called Refuge Retreat, and its purpose, its goal is to unify a generation of college students to be disciple-making followers of Jesus. Not when they go back home, when they go back to school. So today you're going to hear their story. It's a story of a couple who has stepped out in faith to join Jesus in his mission, and a couple that God is using to impact college students all across the country. Share the interview with us, John.
Adam, it's great to have you on Rooftop Perspectives today. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you had an incredible Christmas and New Year's with your family, and you're geared up for 2023.
Yes, we are ready to get going. Enough. Christmas Day, my wife was like, all right, out with the Christmas tree. Let's move on. So I don't know what everybody else's traditions are, but we're ready to get going in January. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Well, let's begin by I want to hear your story. I want to hear about, of course, your family, but your journey to Christ and God's calling on your life in this season.
Sure. So I grew up a deep South Mississippi boy, the son of a PK. I'm a PK from birth, and so my dad's always been in ministry. He was a student pastor when I was a really little kid, and then became a lead pastor when I was around in middle school. And so we grew up in church, kind of the Southern Baptist way, in church Sundays and all Wednesdays, and so that was kind of my life. And I remember as a 7-year-old boy watching people walk down the aisle in our church and wondering where they were going. What are they doing going down there? Are there snacks down there? And I just remember asking my dad afterwards why they were doing that. And he, as a pastor, he began to explain the gospel and, who Jesus is, why he did what he did. And I remember in that moment, obviously as a 7-year-old, there's a lot that you don't understand. And I mean, as a 36-year-old now, there's still a lot I don't understand, but I just remember as a 7-year-old understanding the very simplicity of the gospel that he died for me. And I was overwhelmed by the fact that he died for me. And so at that point, I would say that's when I became a Christian, but it was, all through my life and really in high school when I started to understand that it's a relationship that he's after. And so it just began, as we were always in church, just began serving in the church. I began getting into leading worship and playing. I'm a keyboard player at heart and kind of forced myself to be an acoustic guitar player, but just began leading worship in my youth group. And as I was doing that, I think that was God's way of just showing me that he wanted to use me in ministry somehow. I didn't know how. I never really had a heart to be a pastor. I didn't really think, I'm going to pastor a church one day. But knew that God wanted to use me in ministry. And so fast forward through college, and I played 1 year of baseball. I'm a big baseball guy, love baseball. And I played 1 year in college, my freshman year, and just kind of realized that I loved baseball more than I loved God, basically, was where I was my freshman year. And that you don't win battles with God. When he wants you and, you're trying to fight him on it, you're not going to win that battle. And so I transferred out my freshman year and finished out at University of Mobile in Alabama. and got an undergrad in worship leadership, which that does exist. And so I got my undergrad there, and quickly, right out of college, went to seminary. I had been dating a girl from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is, we were long distance for a while, and we ended up getting engaged right out of college and got married shortly after. So once I moved to North Carolina, I was like, wow, 4 seasons. There actually are 4 seasons in a year.
Exactly.
That's amazing. I can experience fall and winter and not just a bunch of summers. And so loved it here, and got a job at a church right out of seminary. And God's just been using me in worship leadership, was kind of like my go-to. And he's really grown me a lot over the years. And it's funny, all of us can say this when you look over where, the different paths and different things where God has led you. It's all to prepare you for what he wants you to do, where he wants you to have the most impact. And I served in a church for 6 years as worship intern, worship pastor, creative pastor, shepherding pastor. I mean, I was kind of like, doing all these things. And when I look back, I go, man, God was really teaching me a lot about all those different areas. And in 2014, near the end of 2014 and the beginning of 2015, me and my wife branched out and helped plant a church out in Clayton, North Carolina. And it was a really cool adventure for us to learn just so much about what that looks like. And really cool to do ministry with your spouse. That was a big learning curve, and really fun for us. And so we did that. And when you plant a church, you do everything from clean the bathrooms to lead worship on the stage. And so we did all that, which was a lot of fun. And it was about almost 5 years into the church plant where Kaitlin and I, my wife, just got this really uncomfortable feeling that God was doing something. And I'll often say that it's usually God speaks when you're uncomfortable, when you're feeling like, uh-oh, what's going on? And so we just committed to 6 to 8 months. We didn't put a timeline on it, but we were like, all right, if we know that God's saying something to both of us and it feels big, and heavy, then we need to focus in on his voice. And so we dove into scripture, and we just started New Testament, and then we just read the whole New Testament. I mean, Matthew to Revelation, and just praying out loud, like, God, what do you have for us? What do you want? And we had two phrases from the songs that we were listening to, worship music in the morning. But one was, God, if you're not in it, then we don't want it. Let it fade away. And that was a really important prayer for us, and honestly has still been a big prayer for us, because when you're praying through what God has for you, and I won't get too much into this, but it's really easy to eventually morph your plan into God's plan, because you don't know what it is. And so you're like, all right, well, I'll just do this. And before you know it, you're doing what you want and not what God wanted in the first place. So we just wanted to be careful and not push our own agenda into God's agenda. And so that was our prayer. And then really the main posture for us was another phrase, which is just, God, I'll follow you anywhere. Wherever you lead, we'll go. And so that was our main prayers. And out of that, we both knew it was college ministry. We had both had a heart for college students in that generation, and our lives were impacted at that time of our life. And so we knew it was college ministry. And then through some prayer and maybe some slight marital arguments, we realized that God was saying that it was through retreat center, doing retreats and leading retreats for college students, bringing them in, unifying college students with the sole purpose of giving them the tools, the training, the encouragement to go back to their college campuses to make disciples. And so that's kind of my life in a nutshell, at least up until now, where we are. We're in Hendersonville, North Carolina, just south of Asheville, the beautiful Western North Carolina mountains. And
beautiful.
We love it here. And we have 3 girls. I'm a girl dad. That's what I tell people. It's actually, when I go hiking, that's my trail name, is Girl Dad. No one really understands what that means or knows how to explain it. But I have 3 girls. They're 7, 5, and 3. So
Wow.
We're living the crazy life. And that may be why I wanted to get rid of the Christmas tree so quickly. I was like, all right, look, the chaos is over. Let's move on. You girls go back to school, for crying out loud. But yeah, so we're loving it. We've been doing we lead a ministry now called Refuge Retreat, which is a retreat ministry for college students, just like what we felt like God's calling us to do. It's a huge faith step, and we're just kind of living. You hear the phrase "living the dream," and
Yeah.
and that is, I mean, we're living what we feel like we've been dreaming out, and there's still a lot of dreams left, but we're just kind of taking it one step at a time. So that's kind of where we're.
And I love what you said about, you took the time to really pray and make sure that you weren't imposing your mission on God's mission.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. Our tagline at the Rooftop is joining Jesus in his mission. But I'm always telling people, you need to take time to listen to the heart of God to discover what his mission is.
Yeah.
Because our default is to say, God bless what we're doing, instead of God show us what you're blessing, so
That's
we can
right.
be a part of it. And I love the fact that you and Kaitlin took time to really dive into scripture and pray, because for those that are listening, I'm hoping that'll be a word of encouragement if they're in that season of thinking, okay, God, what's next? That they'll take time to listen and let God in his timing show them what's next.
Right.
And I love your passion for college students. Let's talk about college students, because this is a generation that is challenging, but yet, man, we're seeing God do so many exciting things right now with this generation. But let's talk about, your college students. I know on the website, you have that question that you answer, why college students? So speak into that some for us.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the answers to the questions why can just be easily summed up with God, obviously. So that it starts there, like that. It was a pull that we felt God was kind of pulling both me and my wife simultaneously, which was really cool, because I didn't want to be led to college students, but my wife not be, and then I just kind of pull her along. Like it felt like it needed to be both of us, and it was, which was really cool. And so when we looked at that and saw, that age, that generation, a word that we use a lot with refuge stuff is living the in between, or living in the gap. And we feel like in your life, from birth to the days that your days are over, there are all these in betweens, going back and forth, transitioning from a different job, graduating high school, going to college. But when you look at like long periods of time, those 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, whatever you choose to do, those years that you're in college are this huge in between, this big gap where a lot of times we look at that generation as not quite there, not quite adults, but they want to be seen as adults. Don't have it figured out, no careers yet. They're trying to figure out their spouses. They're obsessed with if they're going to find a spouse or not. They're changing majors left and right. Like there's all these questions and doubts, and all this is happening on the more like corporate social side of things. But then when you look at the spiritual side of things, it is just complete chaos. I mean, it is complete confusion, doubt, and then a lot of insecurities, but then a lot of just like, that sounds great. You sound really smart, or, a professor will be, very wise and present things very well. And at that college age, you'll just go for it. And so we just felt this pull to a generation that really is being led astray by the non-Christian world. But then when you look at it from the church standpoint, the capital C church, college ministry has been basically, said that it's the most neglected ministry in the church. And not, I wouldn't say, well, I would say intentionally, and I don't mean that rude. I'm saying to an extent to where a lot of times it takes resources that churches don't have or don't want to pour into a ministry that tends to not, we don't live in a college town. That's a big phrase. It's a church that we don't live in a college city or whatever. You can't tell me that you don't have any 18 to 25-year-olds in your town. Like there's no way that there's a town out there that exists that doesn't have any 18 to 25-year-olds. Like they do exist. And so I just feel like a lot of times that is a very neglected generation. And where we come in with that as we go, man, not only is it our calling, but like our heart breaks for the college student that grew up in church their whole life because mom and dad made them go. And then they get to college and they have no backbone They have no foundation biblically because they were forced to do something, and now they're just wandering. And there's all these statistics out there about, kids that don't go to church and when they get to college, and those are all true. But the worst stat for us is that the percentage of college students that are just abandoning faith altogether is rising, and that to us that's more crucial than them just not going to church. We will always believe in the local church, find a church, yes, and we're trying to partner with lots of churches to point college students to these churches while they're in college. But more so than anything, we try to teach them or just really stress the importance of finding a godly community while you're in college. Find a godly community that will help you, point to scripture, but then also grow in your relationship with Jesus while you're in college. It's crucial, man. It's huge when we see people that understand that and get that. And now we have adults that will call us and say, "Hey, I get it, because when I was in college, I wondered my freshman, sophomore year, I was going crazy. But then my junior year, I realized how important it is for me to start living for Jesus while I'm in college. Not when I graduate, not when I get a real job or any of that, but like now." And so we have a huge heart for them. We see, I don't like to really use the word potential just because it means you're not quite there yet, but we just see what God can do so much in and through college students, and the impact they can make is crazy. So it's not about me and my wife being the best college pastors that we could possibly be. We're going to strive for that. It's about college students taking their responsibility of making disciples on their campus. That's when we see that happen, that's where massive impact and growth and the gospel is being presented on campuses. And so it excites us. It's fun.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I love about the Refuge Retreat. Your whole focus is on, equipping and challenging these college students to go back and make disciples who make disciples.
Right.
But one of the things I love about college students, I have several college age young men that I'm discipling right now. And one thing I love about college students is they're just so open to relationship. They're so
Right.
open to even someone my age, much older than them, spending time with them and just talking to them and talking about life with them. And that's one of the things that I love about college ministry. And I'm excited right now because, we are seeing a movement on college campuses more and more of God moving, and more college students that are believers realizing, okay, God's placed me on this campus for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here simply to go to school and get a degree.
Right.
I'm here to be a disciple, who points others to Jesus. And I love the Refuge Retreat because that's exactly, what you're doing is helping them understand this is why God's placed you on this campus. It's not an accident.
Right.
And He placed you here to be a disciple maker and to point other students to Christ. And so let's talk about the Refuge Retreat. Again, I love your mission statement to unify a generation of college students to be disciple making followers of Jesus. I mean, that's just my heartbeat, because at the Rooftop, our entire passion is working with Christians all across the globe, making disciples who make disciples. I mean, that's our heartbeat.
Yeah.
And so when I saw your mission statement, man, that just really, I resonated well with that. And I said, yeah, this is what it's about. But share with us some of the things that God has been doing, because I know right now, we're going to talk about the dream in a moment, but I know right now you're having to use other campuses. So how many retreats are you doing during the course of a year at the present?
Yeah, so we partner with two basically summer camps. One is at the beach near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It's a place where I used to work. It was a summer job for me when I was in college, but it's on the beach, which is amazing. So that's Garden City Chapel is the name of it. They're there. We do that in the spring, which is around April. And then we have one here in the mountains that's called Camp Highlander. It's a summer camp that they allow us to use their property. And so last year we completed, just last month, we completed our third full year of ministry. When we launched our ministry, super excited. We did one event and then the pandemic hit. And so that was, I don't recommend to any entrepreneurs launching your nonprofit right before a global pandemic. Probably not the best business strategy. So not that we could help it, but So we did that, but in the last 3 years we've done 5 retreats. And so right now we're doing 2 a year. But this year we're doing 2 back to back in April. And so it's kind of a step of faith. Let's just see what happens kind of thing. But we'll do 2 in April, April 14th through 16th, and then April 21st through 23rd. And then we'll see what happens in the fall. We might do 2 in the fall. We don't know. So we're wanting to add more retreats. It's just because we're utilizing other properties and other people and trying to partner with other people. We're kind of limited on what we can do as far as space goes. But and we only charge $75 for the students to come to these, and so it's not.
Oh, wow. Great price.
It's very inexpensive, and we want for students to be able to come and to be able to be here. And so we're not, as of now, we're not making money from retreats. But what we're seeing is we average 50 to 75 college students per retreat. And when we first started, we thought, they're only going to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to get here. We were thinking 2-hour radius of a location. That's kind of what we'll pull. No one really knows us, but we were wrong. Don't belittle God's plan, because he's got big things. I mean, we just see last April, we had kids drive 10.5 hours. We had kids from Pennsylvania, Maryland, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee. I mean, we pull southeast big time, and then even up into the Maryland, Pennsylvania area, which is just mind-boggling. My only guess is that there's just nothing up there that's that cool to come to. I guess, I don't know. So anyway, so we with the 2 retreats, they're weekend retreats, because that's the best opportunity to pull college students away from their campus. And I don't think I need to do a huge explanation of what God can do when you pull people out of their comfort zone. I mean, we talked about it earlier, but that's really what we see, is God doing some amazing things when you pull these students away from their campus and from their way of life. He's just doing incredible things, and it's really been. I mean, we don't have enough time to tell all the stories. Of course, I'll share whatever, but to just see what God does, during these weekends, it's been unbelievable.
So can you think of one story that stands out into your mind of a student that really God impacted? I know you probably have dozens of them.
Sure.
But a story that just really always sticks out.
Yeah. So, man, it's hard to pinpoint one just because we have many. We've baptized students on our retreats in an ocean, that's freezing out there. We this past fall we baptized 4 students in a lake, and I'm pretty sure it was like 37 degrees. So there have been some amazing things that have happened, and there are lots of stories. The stories that really stick with us are the ones where it's the students that are discipling the students, and we get to see the results of that on a retreat. And so we hear time and time again of a friend or someone that we know that loves Refuge, and they've been to a retreat or 2, and they'll say, "Hey, I invited my friend to come, and they're coming. I'm so excited." And then on that retreat, like we've seen so many times on that retreat, that student is baptizing the friend they just brought, because they've been discipling them for months. And sure, we'd love to see life change during a weekend. A student comes, or I didn't really want to come, but someone talked me into it, so I came. I just wanted to come to the beach, and so they come there, and God does something in their life, and they're impacted. That happens, and we love to hear that, and we love to see the Holy Spirit move in a way, in a worship service, or through the reading of the Word, or whatever it may be. We love to see that and experience it on a weekend. But the thing that we love, and what we're really just it gives us so much energy, is and again, I'm not giving you a specific story, but this has just happened on so many different occasions, where just this past spring, a student told me, he was like, "Hey, I got 3 of my friends coming. I just told them to get in the car. We're going to the beach. They packed for the weekend. They have no idea what any of this is." And I laughed, and I was like, "That's kind of a typical college thing, is to just pile up your car and come." And so they did that. Well, one of the students that was in that car had basically proclaimed that he was an agnostic, that he didn't really care about much of anything as far as any kind of belief. And he on the retreat during one of the worship services, he's kind of taken in the worship. And the way we do worship on a retreat is our musicians, our worship team is in the middle, and everyone just kind of stands in a big circle. We're going for intimacy and just kind of like a laid back thing. And really it engages everyone. So if you're standing there and you don't care anything about worship, you might stick out like a sore thumb. But it's kind of like pulling you in and drawing you in. So we want to make it feel like a living room, not like you're standing in rows and stuff. And so, so we're in the worship and this guy's kind of taking it all in. And it was afterwards that he started asking a lot of questions to his friend, not to us. We knew him and we're meeting him, but he's asking his friend now. And he witnessed and saw God move in a lot of students' lives in a lot of ways, and it was him that got baptized. And so I'm working on some notes right before a session that I'm about to speak in, and the kid that invited all of his friends came to me, and he's soaking wet, and he's in the place where we're about to worship, and I was like, "Did you just get in the ocean?" And he was like, and he's just beaming. I mean, it looks like he just won the lottery, and he's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "What?" What happened? Wasn't it freezing in there? And he was like, "No, we just baptized Aaron." And I was like, "What?" And he, again, he's just like, he is so excited. And he tells me the whole story. And he was like, "Man, he had so many questions. We were up till 2 a.m. talking the night before and all this." And so he just said, man, he realized that, Jesus died for him, and he explained the whole gospel to him. Anyway, so obviously that was a moment where I was just like so excited for him. I gave him a hug, and I'm like, now I'm wet. And so we were just laughing about it and talking about it. And I said, "Hey, before, you go change," I said, "I want you to know, like, you're living out the mission that we feel like God has given us. Like, you are an example of that." And I wish I had time to tell you all the stories, but just this past fall, a student that met this girl, and they stayed up till 2 a.m. in the dining hall area, and he just poured out the whole gospel to her. And her whole life, she had this moralistic deity where it was just, I'm just going to do the best I can. And man, this kid just presented the gospel in such a powerful way, and was like, "You need to talk to Kaitlin, my wife, tomorrow, because you don't need to leave here without making a decision." And he was real in her face about it. And she was like, "Okay." And so, and she was one of the ones we baptized last fall. And so, anyway, it's just a lot of really cool stories, and we see a lot of it, and we get to see God do really cool things during a weekend. But it's the stories of students discipling each other, and that having this lasting impact. And we tell the students a lot, first session or right when they show up, we don't do these retreats for the students' happiness. We're not after them to be happy. Happiness is an emotion we all love, but it's something that comes and goes. But we're after lasting joy, and joy is way different than happiness. And when we see these students disciple each other, and the decisions and the relationships that are formed from that, it's something that really keeps us going and fuels everything we're doing, is to see God do that. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier too, of I can be the best speaker and powerful speaker, and our worship team can be the best, and we try to bring in the best musicians and the best teams, and we have great relationships with leaders and volunteers that are just incredible people. But it's the impact we're seeing when these students realize that, hey, I do have what it takes. It's the hoodie I'm wearing today. Like, I can make disciples. Like, I'm not in this in between where I just do nothing. Isaiah says, when we wait on the Lord, the waiting doesn't mean you just sit and do nothing. It's when we wait, he actually renews our strength. It's in that waiting, it's in that in between where he's doing a lot of work. And so that was probably more than you wanted, or more than you bargained for.
That's awesome.
A lot of stories like that we're seeing, and where we get excited is that we've only been doing this for 3 years. And so we can just see God wanting to work and wanting to move in this generation.
I love that. And that's exactly what it's about. I mean, seeing lives transformed, and then seeing these students get excited about discipling and leading their friends to Christ. And I love those stories. I know you have a dream, though, right now that y'all are pursuing, that
Yes.
God has placed on your heart, because I know that using other people's property can be quite challenging at times. So tell us about the dream so that we can be praying into that with you.
Yeah. So I am a dreamer. That's kind of my personality. I've learned that about myself recently, for sure. But I learned this from I think it was Bob Goff said this, but every dreamer needs a balloon popper, and basically it's a good thing as long as they're popping the right balloons, and that's my wife. So thank you, God, for giving me a balloon popper. But and then Ken Helser, he's been kind of a mentor to us, but they run a retreat center in Sophia, North Carolina, and he said the same thing. He was like, "I'm a dreamer. My wife's a balloon popper." But so I tend to dream all these dreams. My wife's like, "No, we're not doing that. Like that sounds not right." And a lot of times she's right. But our dream, and again, when you talk about calling, or the things that we feel like we're doing, and when you take a leap of faith and step out there and do it, anytime someone says why, or why are you doing this, it's, well, God. That's the answer. We're just trust us. Like we know this sounds crazy, but we're just going for it. But our dream is to have our own place, our own retreat center, and whether it be, and we think it's here in Western North Carolina because God brought us here. Again, that's a much longer story for another time. But when we moved here, we didn't know anybody, not one connection. It was almost like a pinpoint. I kind of relate back to Jonah, where it was like, go here, and at first we were like, no, that doesn't seem right, and we just did. And so, again, when you take steps of faith and you're obedient, God provide. God's always provider. God can't not provide. When you follow him, when you're doing what he's doing, he's going to provide. And we've seen him only provide for our family and take care of us since we've been here. But our dream is to have a place of our own that we call a Refuge Retreat, whether it be existing buildings already here somewhere, blank land where we can build buildings. Our dream is to have our own place. And we kind of have this phrase where we say, we long to have maximum impact for the kingdom, for the gospel, to expand the story of the gospel and to tell it more. And when we see what God's doing when we're borrowing other people's property, we've heard people say, "Oh, well, just keep doing that. Like, just keep utilizing other people's property. That way, you don't have to spend all the money to do your own deal." And I get that, and it is way cheaper to do that. But there's so many limitations, and we're really. Handcuffed is probably a strong way to say it, but we're really just limited on what we can do because we're at the mercy of other people's schedules. So here in the mountains, there's so many, summer camps here are like churches in the South. They're around every corner. There's everywhere you go, there's a summer camp. And so there are a lot of them, but because we're in the mountains, they're all open air and they close down for the winter. And they're definitely not available in the summer because that's where they're making all their money. And so here we're just limited on where we can do things. And if you get a place that, is a 4-season kind of place, then it's going to cost a lot of money. And so we can just see that if we have our own place one day, we can have maximum impact with that. We can offer more retreats, yes, but then we can widen what we're doing as well. We have dreams of doing discipleship schools where we bring students in for longer periods of time where they can stay on our property, a summer, so 3 months, 6 months at a time, where we do more intensive discipleship,
That's great.
training and teaching, but then also utilize them as far as they can work on the property, but that we can help them find local jobs where they can pay, for bills or whatever that way. But so there's a journal page or journal pages full of dreams if we ever have our own property, that we just kind of, continue writing and then push it to the side. But yeah, our dream is for sure to have a place, and we not only do we feel like that's what God has called us to, and we feel like that's what he's told us, we also can see just that impact that can be had if we have our own property, and we're not having to schedule and work around other people's agendas. We can really do our own thing. So
Amen. Well, we will be praying with you, and I just want to encourage everyone that's watching to also be praying into that. And if you want to know more about the Refuge Retreat and how you can be a part of that, there's the website, and I encourage you to go look at the website and And it's a great ministry. And I just love your heart for disciple making and what's happening. And we are just praying intensively that God will open up some property. I pray that he'll just drop into your lap some property with existing buildings so that you can begin pursuing his calling even more, more intentional in these days. But I love the idea of the intensives, being able to bring these students to a place where you can spend 3, 4, 5 months with them and really pour into their life and help them understand here's what it looks like to follow Christ.
Yeah. Well, I mean, online school is more prevalent now than ever. And so we have so many students that, I mean, even some now that, take classes online, live at home. And then as a 19, 20-year-old living at home, they feel the pressure to get out and to leave, but they can't afford to go somewhere else or do anything else. And I can think of right now, on top of my head, 3, maybe 4 students right now that if we had a place, they would be in. And these are disciplers. I mean, these are students that are bringing students to our retreat because they are discipling their peers. 2 of them that I'm thinking of right now are leading Bible studies that we form the curriculum and the material, and they take it and they go lead their students in their living rooms and their dorm rooms, and they're doing that right now. And so we know and we can see the possibilities and the all the things that can be done for ministry. And so that's just when I say earlier that we see these students discipling each other and it fuels us and it fires us up. Man, when year 1.5, year 2, when we didn't have our own place and we're trying to partner with people, we had friends and family members coming to us asking if we were gonna go find different jobs and move back home, move back to where we were before. And I'm going, what? Why? What are you talking about? And they're like, well, you don't have your own place yet, and it's been like 1.5 years. And we're like, okay, but we're after something that God has told us that he's going to do. And so there's an aspect of us where we go, man, faith is not trying it out. Faith is not a trial run and then giving in.
Right.
If you go in, you take a step, you leap, you go for it. And then, you see God. I just think of Moses. I mean, how long did they wonder? And then a lot of people go, oh, well, Moses never made it to the promised land, like that what a tragic story. And I'm like, yeah, the guy was in the transfiguration, he was there walking with Jesus. That's more of a promised land than we could ever imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. Moses didn't miss anything.
No, he got the full experience. So
true.
Not to mention before that, he even got to see the robe, or barely touch it anyway. Exactly. So we're learning so much about living by faith and what that looks like. And, right when you feel like you have enough faith to do what you need to do, you're like, oh, I don't have enough. And so you just fight for more. And man, we're so encouraged by, conversations like this, John. And, we've talked about prayer and with the power of prayer, can just simply praying over a campus and what that can do. And I was just talking to a student just last night that was texting me. He's one of our students that's leading a Bible study, and he was frustrated because he has 13 guys that he's leading in a Bible study, and they talk all the time, and he's walking them through Ephesians. And he was frustrated because a lot of them said they were going to show up and they didn't. And so he was bummed that some of them didn't show up to his Bible study. And I was just encouraging him, and I was like, man, let me challenge you. When's the last time that you just spent some time praying over each one of those guys in your group? Maybe there's 3 of them that have never responded or never shown up, but just spend time praying over them. I was like, that's it. And, it just seems like we always think that prayer is just not enough. It's not enough because it's not an action. It's not something that we're physically doing, but it is. It is, and it's crucial to just seeing God work and opening your eyes and your ears and your heart to what God can do. And it's just so powerful. And so I've just been so encouraged by this conversation. But then, I don't know for you, if you've seen all this stuff going on with Damar Hamlin and the football player that,
yes,
so badly injured. And it's been such a crazy thing to see prayer take over our country from people that probably would not even say that they're, following Jesus or know what that means or whatever, but they're praying. And I just think it's so interesting that, there was a statistic forever ago. I don't remember how long ago it was, of the percentage of people in America that would claim to be Christians was like here, and then the percentage of people that say they would pray was like way up here. And it's just funny that like there is an underlying feeling or belief that prayer works and is real.
There is.
So I
There
just
is.
think it's interesting. And I when we ask for prayer, and when we have a prayer team that I email stuff every now and then, just asking for prayer, my family for prayer, for our college students, all that financial, help. And it's just such a powerful thing that I think we neglect and don't do enough. And so I really appreciate asking for prayer for Refuge, for Rooftop, for, ministries that are making huge impacts. It's a big deal.
It makes a difference because
Oh,
prayer
yeah.
is connecting with the heart of God. And when you
Yeah.
connect with the heart of God and begin praying his heart over things, God moves. And so I can't wait for the day to come visit your new campus once
Thank
God
you.
puts it into your lap. And
Yes, we will do free tours. That's for sure.
it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing because I've seen God do it before for other ministries where he's just done that. And I serve on the board of a ministry right now that God just placed an incredible campus in our lap, 8 years ago, that we would have never dreamed of having as part of Teen Challenge. And so, but God's good and he will provide. Well, man, thank you for taking the time today to share the story about your life and about the Refuge Retreat. I'm excited about what God's doing across college campuses, and as I'm talking to different college ministries, and I love what you're doing with the Refuge Retreat is you're focused on making disciples who make disciples, and just helping these students understand this is what it looks like to join Jesus on your campus each day.
Yeah.
and just share the gospel. And I look forward to sometime coming over, since I'm not that far from you,
Yeah.
and spending some time in person and getting to meet Kaitlin and the kids, and looking forward to how we can partner together in the future as well, as both of us have just this huge heart for discipling others. And it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Man, thank you for the time today. I appreciate you
Thank you,
taking the
John.
time. God bless, brother.
Thank you. You too.
Wow. Okay. I know we tell people a lot of times get a piece of paper and a pencil, get a notebook. You're going to have 3 or 4 pages of notes from that. I've got things spilling out of my head right now, but I think probably one of the most powerful statements to me as somebody who's in ministry, it's easy to morph our plans into God's plans.
Yes.
Make sure you're not pushing your agenda onto his agenda. Don't try to substitute yours for his. Be patient.
That is so good. That is so true, because we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
And it's important that we don't do that. And the way that we make sure that we don't do that is something that Adam's talked about in the interview, was we need to take time to pray and read God's word and listen to what God is saying to us. Wait for God to reveal his plan. I thought it was so helpful when he talked about the fact that when God gave them that burden early on, I mean, they just spent months just praying and seeking God, and then waited for God to show them exactly what he wanted them to do. Yeah. And that's how we keep from pressing our agenda onto God's agenda, so we make sure that we're part of his plan.
Yeah. I think the other thing he said is when God finally speaks, go for it.
Yes.
Don't hesitate. Jump in, dive in, go find what's happening. He said people are not going to fully understand. He's got family and friends that are trying to talk him out of this. Well, you haven't found your own place yet, so obviously you're not supposed to be there. He's going, no, you keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. You keep moving towards him in faith. And at the moment God's ready, he's going to do what he does, as long as we're being faithful to go for it when he speaks and following.
Amen.
Obedience.
It's all about obedience. Yeah. And Adam and Kaitlin are just a great example of that. And so we encourage you. This is one of those interviews you want to watch several times, because it is so packed. I mean, we could have given you 15 takeaways from today. We could do a whole nother episode of just takeaways, from this one interview, because so much about faith, so much about stepping out and trusting God. And of course, now, they're trusting God for the big dream of God providing them with that property.
Yep.
And so we're asking all of you that are listening and watching this to be praying for God to give them amazing property. I'm praying for property with buildings already on it that they can just move into, and that God would just place that in their lap. But if you want to find out more, we shared this in the interview, but here's their website, the refugeretreat.com. I encourage you to go there, watch the video about what the retreat looks like, and share it with friends, especially those that have college students at home or at college. This is an amazing, amazing place. And we also want to remind you every week, besides watching us on the Rooftop Facebook page or the Rooftop TV YouTube channel, we are now on TWR 360 every Wednesday. The new episode drops on TWR 360. We encourage you to go and check out this amazing website. We're one of probably 100 ministries on that website. So there's all kind of teaching, there's music, Bible studies. It's an amazing website, and we're honored to be a part of the TWR Transworld Radio family. And we also encourage you, if you want to know more about the Rooftop and the Rooftop International and who we are and what we are doing around the world, visit us at therooftop.org. We have a number of things coming up this year we're really excited about, as we're beginning to launch our first of 5 discipleship summits in March in Bogota, Colombia. And so go to the website, learn more about the ministry, how you become a part of the Rooftop movement around the world, as we are engaged in making disciples who make disciples in every nation. So it's been an incredible day, Michael. Thank you for joining me. What an opportunity it was. What a great opportunity to share the story.
Yep. A real privilege to listen to Adam and just to see the faith walk that he's doing. What a challenge to all of us, no matter what we're doing.
Amen. Well, thank you for watching today. God bless, and have an incredible week as you join Jesus in his